Welcome to Direction Northeast. Hello, I'm Abby Hathorn. This program is a presentation of the Communications Department of Northeast State Community College. This episode of Direction Northeast continues our series of programs dealing with relationships. This episode examines dating violence. We'll explore this critical topic and learn more about its devastating effects. We'll start our discussion following these messages.
Going to college was a big decision, but when I graduate from Northeast State, I know I can have a career.
Over half of our employees are graduates of Northeast State Community College.
When we see Northeast State on an application, we always give that candidate a second look.
Our company partners with Northeast State knowing that their students graduate as trained professionals that become our employees both today and into the future.
Discover the career opportunities that await you. Northeast State Community College.
Dating violence is controlling, abusive, and aggressive behavior in a romantic relationship. It can happen in straight or gay relationships. It can include verbal, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. Today, our guests will try to shed some light on dating violence. First, let me introduce Miss Debbie Masters, and to her left is Miss Renae Tipton. Both ladies are community educators. Miss Masters is an Abuse Alternatives, a domestic violence intervention agency providing services in Upper East Tennessee. Ms. Tipton is with CHIPS, Change is Possible, a family violence agency providing services in Carter, Greene, and Unicoi counties in Tennessee. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
So first of all, Ms. Masters, please explain to us the nature of Abuse Alternatives.
Well, Abuse Alternatives is, like you said, a domestic violence intervention agency, and we provide services not only in East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee, but also in Southwest Virginia. And we provide services to both women and men who are victims of domestic violence. And we have a shelter, that's our biggest service, but we also have a batterers intervention program. We provide court advocacy, community education, volunteer coordination. We have a children's program. And actually, they're just very, very comprehensive services throughout the community. And our goal is to try to reduce and eventually eliminate domestic violence throughout our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ms. Tipton, what is CHIPS? What do they do?
CHIPS is a family violence shelter. We also assist victims of domestic violence. We have a 24-hour crisis hotline. We have a safe and confidential shelter. We also provide court advocacy. We have support group, community education. We have a thrift store, and we also do volunteer coordination through our thrift store and direct client volunteers. And we also do merchandise vouchers to give back to the community, and that's to anybody in need, just not domestic violence victims.
Now, obviously, being involved, with people that are in that situation, what exactly is dating violence for those of us who don't know?
Dating violence is when one partner in the relationships tries to exert power and control over another partner. And they can do that through manipulation, the different types of violence, any way that they can get control over that partner.
And Ms. Masters, why do some people abuse their dating partners? Why is that a thing?
Well, it's interesting because so many people seem to feel that it's all about anger. And I do feel that anger plays a part in it, but I think the biggest reason has to do with power and control, not anger. It may be precipitated by anger, yes, but there are people who just want to exert power and control, like Renae said. And there are those of us who may be angry, but we stop. We don't have that need, that desire to have power over someone. And so it becomes more about wanting to control someone, like I'll do this because I can, not because I want to. We all have conflict, and we all need to resolve that conflict. But it doesn't have to go as far as I need to have power over you or tell you what to do or control you. Like you're a piece of property, you're someone that I can do this to just because I can, and I want to control you, and I want to tell you what to do, because that never does, you never find a solution to that. So that's going way beyond conflict resolution or way beyond anger.
And just based on our past conversations about dating violence, would you say that people that are experiencing this kind of violence, did they just grow up in a home like that, or because they don't know any better? What makes someone not go, okay, this is not okay?
There are so many factors involved. Statistics show that children who grow up witnessing violence in their homes, that 1 out of 2 will, and again, this is just statistics reporting, 1 out of 2 of those children will grow up to become abusers or abuse victims, or they may become abusers in one setting, say the workplace, and then become abuse victims in another setting. So that's 1 out of 2, 50%. And it's just because that's what they're familiar with, that's what they grow up seeing. They may feel that it's wrong, they may feel that it's bad, they may know it doesn't feel good, but they repeat what they know, they repeat what they see. It just becomes part of who they are. And so what Renae and I do, part of what we do and our colleagues do, is we try to work with children, we try to work with our clients to find other ways to live, to build their self-esteem, their self-worth, their self-confidence, and learn other ways to deal with problems, to deal with anger, and to realize that they can live lives that are violence-free and then not go into another relationship, build their self-esteem so that when they go into another relationship, they're not looking for another relationship that is full of violence.
Now, Ms. Masters, what kind of role does drugs and alcohol play in this dating violence as well? Because we know that it's an issue, but how big of an issue is it?
Well, it's something I think is really interesting because we are trying to figure out whether we see drugs and alcohol quite a bit in domestic violence. And it's interesting if you ask clients who are, or victims, domestic violence victims, and some will say they grew up with drugs and alcohol, and maybe there was violence in the home as well, so they've always been around drugs and alcohol, or the abuse of drugs and alcohol. Some say that they got into drugs and alcohol with their violent partners, that their violent partners got them into drugs and alcohol. Some say that they were in a violent relationship already, and they started abusing drugs and alcohol to cope with the pain and the trauma of everyday violence. And then some say they were already into drugs and alcohol, substance abuse, and that they feel like that's what led them into a violent relationship. So that's 3 different scenarios involving drugs and alcohol. So we know that it plays a big part in violent relationships, and that's 3 different ways, in which we see it coming into a relationship. So I would love to do a study or something about that, but we do see it a lot.
Yep. And Ms. Tipton, whenever a partner hits his or her partner and has that abuse, is this something that's likely to stop, or is it something that's likely to continue with dating violence?
It's more likely to continue. I think probably you use the same thing in abuse alternatives, but it's the cycle of abuse. And what generally happens is nobody goes into a relationship. They don't introduce themselves and say, hey, I'm such and such, and I'm going to end up abusing you. It's all, flowers and candy and romance. And from there, you walk on eggshells. There's the bickering starts, the small things. Little arguments, and then from there it goes to the violence, and then it goes back to the honeymoon stage to where I'm sorry, I did that, and at that point, the first time it happened, the victim, is probably going to believe the abuser. It's not going to happen again. It was a one-time thing. He lost his temper. She lost his temper. But what the cycle does, it just continues, and then it'll start with the bickering, and it just goes over and over. And a lot of times, that cycle happens at such a slow pace that the victim doesn't even realize that they're stuck in this cycle.
And Ms. Masters, is this type of abuse always physical, or can there be other types of abuse in a dating violence situation?
Rarely can there be one type of abuse without another. They tend to overlap, because if a person is being physically abused, then psychological abuse, emotional abuse is naturally a part of that. Someone is not going to hit another person without that person suffering psychologically as well. And then, of course, if a person is sexually abused, then their bodies are also physically abused as well as suffering emotionally. So it's like all these different types of abuse are intertwined, it seems like. Verbal abuse is also emotionally damaging. So emotional abuse creeps into all different kinds of abuse. And then if you look at economic abuse, we see a lot of economic or financial abuse as well. So emotional abuse definitely, filters into all of these different types of abuse.
Now, Ms. Masters, it's kind of hard to turn on the TV and not see, oh, okay, there's a domestic violence situation or somewhere in our area. And in addition to that, what kind of happens if the police are called in this situation? What are they going to do?
That's a really, really good controversial question. We at Abuse Alternatives, during Domestic Violence Awareness Month in October, a colleague of mine and I go to all the law enforcement agencies, the Bristol, Tennessee Police Department, Bluff City, Bristol, Virginia, and the Sullivan County Sheriff's Department, to all their roll calls and talk with law enforcement officers. And so we get a lot of information every October, and then we talk to them off and on during the year too. But with the law, the way the law is crafted now, if they're called to a domestic violence call, which by the way, more police officers are killed nationwide responding to domestic violence calls than any other call that they ever get. So they are not fond of responding to domestic violence calls because you just don't know what you're going to face when you get there. But according to the law now, they have to, when they respond, there is a primary aggressor statute. They have to determine who the primary aggressor is. And so they have to determine, which person it is who started it. That can be very, very difficult because when they get there, she can say he did it, he can say she did it. So they have to figure it out.
Right.
They have to take somebody, or they have to take both to jail. So.
Yeah. And Ms. Masters, before the police ever get involved, what are some of those warning signs? So if someone's in that situation, before the police even have to be called, what should they know? So what are some of those signs?
Of the couple?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Jealousy. Quite often there's always jealousy. She may be, if it's a male-female couple, he may be accusing her of seeing someone cheating on him when she may never be. She may be, but maybe she isn't, or he could be cheating on her. One of the main things we always see is isolation. The abuser will try to isolate the partner from family, from friends, maybe not even let the partner go to the mall, go to school, go to work. Isolation and jealousy are two of the things we see the most. Isolating the partner from family, saying, well, your family doesn't like me, so I don't want you to see your family anymore. Those two things primarily. But there are a whole host of things. But those are the two things we see primarily.
Right. And Ms. Masters, again, whenever someone's in an abusive relationship and they're wanting to leave, is it just like breaking up in any regular dating relationship, or is there some other things that come along with that?
Oh, there are a lot of things that come along with that. The abuser does not want to lose power and control. It's not the same as someone just being angry or having their heart broken, being sad. This person does not want to lose that power and control that he or she has. 87% of the homicides that occur in violent relationships happen when a partner tries to leave or right after the partner has left. So that is just huge. So that's a very, very volatile time. So there needs to be some kind of a strategy, some kind of a safety plan during that time. So it's not just like breaking up and leaving, because, like I said, that's a very, very dangerous time. So there needs to be some kind of a plan to be able to leave safely. Maybe there would be no reason, for that. But if a person has abused you during your relationship, then this is a time that the person may be the most dangerous.
Right. And I know with, you Ms. Masters being involved, with abuse alternatives and things like that, who can a person go to for help in this situation if they're in an abusive relationship and they want to get out? Mm-hmm. How can abusive alternatives kind of give them some guidelines?
Anybody that person feels they can trust. It could be someone in a church, their clergy. It could be a best friend. Anyone at a domestic violence agency that they have, they don't have to know someone they have developed a rapport with, but they're advocates at a domestic violence agency. The hotline, like Renae was talking about at CHIPS and also at Abuse Alternatives, we never close. Our hotline is open every single minute of every single day. And we have trained employees. Now, they're not volunteers, although we do have volunteers, but the hotline is manned by trained employees designed to help people who call in for help to leave. Call law enforcement. You know, the hotline is probably the best source because, you know, we can direct you to anyone. But I would say anyone that person feels they can trust, from clergy to a hotline to friends to law enforcement, anyone they feel they can trust to help them.
Now, Renae, let's say that I was in a dating or an abusive dating relationship and experienced some violence. How would I need to go about getting out of that? What would I need to do?
Okay, like she was saying, you know, there's all different types of organizations that you could contact to do that. But I think the most important thing would be to safety plan. A victim knows more about what kind of danger they're going to face better than anybody else. So if you know somebody that's in a dating violence relationship, it's easy to say, you need to leave, you need to do this, do it now, do it now. But the victim knows what their safest time period is. So I would definitely, if you're considering leaving an abusive relationship, sit down and safety plan, you know, figure out the best times. If you live with that partner, it's best to, you know, make sure you have all of your identification, your prescriptions, your medications, things like that, in one location to where you can grab them easily. If you feel like there's going to be a high danger level when you leave, it might be good to look into an order of protection. And if you don't know what an order of protection is, you would go to the courthouse, the clerk's house, and you would file. CHIPS can help you do that. Abuse Alternatives can help you do that. And I'm sure other domestic violence programs can as well. But basically, you're granted an ex parte if the danger level is high enough, and that tells that abuser you can't contact this person, you cannot go around this person. You can't get your mom to contact that person. There's no third party allowed. And if you do, then you can be arrested right on the spot. And that differs from a restraining order in the fact that a restraining order, you would have to make another court date and you would go back to court where then the punishment would issue, whereas an order of protection, it's a lot higher. You lose your privilege to bear arms for a year. So if you feel like, you know, your danger level is going to greatly increase at that, then you should definitely look into an order of protection, maybe a domestic violence shelter. Tell somebody you trust and you love where you're going, and make code words. You know, if you say, okay, I'm going to end this relationship today, and if I call and say, you know, it's raining out, then you know you need to call 911 or, you know, something like that, so you have a safety plan in place.
Right.
So.
And Renae, you know, with what you're doing with CHIPS, have there been situations, you know, where you're in your job and you're going, okay, like you've had to give this advice to people, but sometimes they just don't listen. What are some of those things that you can tell people who kind of seem to be in this repetitive motion of not just, you know, domestic violence, but also dating violence situations?
Are you talking about the ones that don't leave?
Yeah, like more of like either they don't leave or they kind of keep getting in those types of situations because it's all they know.
Right. Generally, a victim will return 7 times to an abusive relationship before they're out for good, and it's important to remember not to judge those people or you know, not to burn the bridges or whatever, because whether or not it's comfortable, that's their comfort zone. That's what they know. And there's a lot of reasons that play into why a victim stays or why they return. So all you can really do is provide them advice, help them safety plan, and just be there as a support system for them until they're completely ready to leave the situation.
That's crazy, 7 times. And Ms. Masters, whenever you're trying to get out of a domestic or a dating violence situation, and they're saying, oh, no, it's not going to happen anymore, the abuse obviously doesn't stop. So is there ever a point where maybe the abuse does stop for periods of time that kind of leads the other partner on to say, okay, maybe this is the time where they're not going to do that anymore?
You know, I don't know about Renae, but I really don't see that. I do know clients who have left, for example, have come to our shelter and were just not able to do it, because I think we forget that, you know, they don't leave because they've fallen out of love with their partner, and love is such a strong emotion, and they don't want, all they want is for the abuse to stop. The love is still there, and some people argue with that and say, Well, how could you love him when he beats you? Love, I don't know if I can explain that. I don't know if you can wrap your head around that. And so they go back. And the partner maybe loves them and still beats them. And I know there's some people would say, Debbie, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But she goes back, and maybe he is scared. Maybe he says, gosh, I didn't realize how much I loved you. And she's back. And then it's like Renae said, the honeymoon time comes back. And everything's just wonderful, maybe for a couple months. But then the abuse begins again. And I have never seen it not. I'm sure there maybe are people that has happened to. And so everything is great. You might even see her on the street. How are things going? You know, getting away was just the thing. He realized how much he loved me and missed me. And then she's back in 6 months. And she may even try it again. I've never seen it not happen, but I'm not saying that it hasn't. I just haven't seen it. So yeah, I think it can stop for a while. But then that need for power and control, again, it's not just anger. You're different, I'm different, I hope. I don't have that need for power and control, so I can stop before I bring my fist down, you know. The abuser can't, because he has to have that power and control.
Now, Ms. Masters, what if someone, you know, what should I say to a friend if they come to me saying that their partner is abusing him or her?
First of all, don't say, well, how long has this been going on? Well, why didn't you tell me? How could you possibly stay? Why, if my boyfriend, my partner hit me one time, I'd be out of there. Because you have made her feel so small. She thought that she could come to you as her friend and get some kind of, not sympathy, but some kind of consolation. And what you've done is you have re-victimized her. And you didn't realize it. Your intentions were good, but out of shock or surprise, you've made her feel so small and lowered her self-esteem again. So just support her, like Renae was saying. Just help her with resources. Listen. She's come to you, maybe not for advice, because if you've not been in her situation, you can't really advise her. Just listen to her. What does she need? She needs you to listen, maybe. Maybe she needs some resources, some phone numbers. Maybe she needs to know that if she can run out of her house and get away, she has your house to go to. See what she needs from you. She may not be anywhere near ready to go, but she's taken that first step just by telling you. That's progress, to admit it to you. So don't make her feel bad. Don't re-victimize her. Give her an ear to talk to.
Now, Renae, what kind of role do you think self-esteem sort of plays in these situations where, you know, a partner is either trying to get out of a relationship like this or just trying to say, hey, I think I'm being abused?
We've been to a training before, and they did this exercise where they said, go to somebody you don't know in this training and tell them your best sexual experience. And of course, all of us were like, oh my God, you don't know. And she gave us time to do it, you know, and of course, nobody did it. We all just laughed and kind of picked at the table or whatever. And then she said, now imagine having to tell somebody your worst, you know, whether it was rape or whatever. Imagine how that would make you feel. And, you know, you always, for the majority of the time, you hear, oh, he's so sweet, you know, your friends and peers talking about their relationships. And things like that, and to actually have to go to somebody and admit to somebody, you know, one of the people who says they love me hurts me, they abuse me, they, you know, different things like that. It's got to make you feel smaller or like there's something wrong with me. You know, how come they can have a healthy relationship and not get abused? What's wrong with me? Or why does he feel like he needs to hit me? So it's really harmful to self-esteem, even though if you know in your mind there's nothing wrong with me, it's a constant, you know, they make sure to remind you, you're lower than I am, I'm better than you, you know, you can't do any better. So no matter how hard you try to build that up while you're in that relationship, the abusive partner's going to find a way to beat it back down.
Now, Debbie, wouldn't most people leave after, you know, their partners hit them, but like, So why would anybody stay after that? We know we talk about this power of love, but what would make somebody stay after being physically abused?
Well, I think it just depends on circumstances. You know, maybe the victim is dependent on their partner for financial stability. Quite often, abusive partners take their partner's paycheck. Quite often, they make them stop working. So just being able to pay the bills. Maybe he's threatened quite often to take the children. And I know as a mom, if I needed to leave, but I'd have to leave my babies, believe me, I'm staying until I can figure out a way to take my children, because nothing's more important than my children, especially if it means leaving my children with an abuser. You know, I know what I'm leaving my children with, and there ain't no way I'm leaving without my children. And I know Renae feels the same way. Pets too. That's a huge thing, pets.
Yes.
I care very much about my pets, and I know what's going to happen to my pets the same way I might about my children. That's a huge thing we hear from clients, by the way, is many clients don't want to leave because they know their abuser will kill their pets. And this codependency thing, because like Renae was just saying, he's made her feel, or she's made him feel like they can't live without him. So how can I live? No one's ever going to want me. Where am I going to go? Who's going to help me? As hard as we work, there are plenty of people out there who don't know we exist. They don't know that we're there to help them. And they think the police are against them. He has them so convinced, and I say he because the majority of abusers are still male. He has them convinced that there's no one to help them. Maybe their families don't want them. There are just so many reasons that they won't leave.
Exactly.
And
Now,
this-
Renae, whenever we're kind of looking at this and being involved with CHIPS, what's one of those resources that you see being used a lot in our county area, just before we close?
For domestic violence victims, orders of protection, I think, are used quite a bit in the court system. I don't think our court advocate has ever went to court and there be no orders of protection at all. I think that's probably the biggest one that they use. Like Debbie was saying, a lot of people don't know that there's actual programs for domestic violence victims.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
It's been very great.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. We'll be right back in just a moment to wrap up Direction Northeast.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
timing is
I'm
always
a
so
wife,
crazy.
a mother, and a student pursuing my dreams.
I came back to school with a passion to help people.
Came back to Northeast State to study electromechanical because I like working with my hands.
To be a producer. At 64, I'm a student and an entrepreneur.
Wherever you are and whenever you're going, we are here to get you there at Northeast State.
That concludes the program for today. We talked about dating violence and its effect with Miss Debbie Masters and Miss Renae Tipton. Both are community educators from Abuse Alternatives. Community is very important to the students at Northeast State Community College, and this program takes a look at a few of the subjects they find important. Until we meet next time, on behalf of the students, staff, and faculty of Northeast State Community College, I'm Abby Hathorn, and this is Direction Northeast.